Sometimes the greatest transformations don't come with applause or lightning bolts. They begin in silence, in a whisper, in a heart tired of pretending everything is fine. Ethan had always been the kind of man who played by the rules. Wake up early, go to work, pay the bills, smile at church, be grateful. But inside, something was cracking. He had done everything right, yet something felt off. The numbers in his bank account barely moved. His prayers felt mechanical. His joy had been replaced by silent comparison. Why were others thriving? Why did it feel like heaven had favorites? He didn't speak it aloud, but it echoed in his chest like a silent confession. One night, while scrolling through videos in bed, he stumbled upon a short clip. It was a preacher quoting Proverbs 3:5. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." The preacher added, "You've trusted God in theory, but have you trusted Him with your wallet, with your fears, with your future?" Ethan paused. He realized his prayers were filled with words but not surrender. His generosity was measured. His faith was cautious. That same week, while walking through a bookstore, a quote from Napoleon Hill stopped him cold. "Faith removes limitations." It wasn't just about religion. It was about belief as a force, a power that shapes reality. Ethan stood there in the aisle, staring at the quote like it was a mirror. He bought the book. That night, he made a decision, not to fix everything, but to stop pretending he was okay. He wrote in his journal, "I don't want to survive with a fake smile. I want to live with real purpose." He began each morning reading a proverb. No phones, no noise, just a notebook, a verse, and a prayer. Proverbs 11:24 hit him hard. "One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty." He had never seen giving as a path to increase. In his mind, giving was noble, but losing. But this was different. This wasn't donation. It was alignment, trust, planting. So he tested it. He began giving without expecting back. Time, kindness, money, even if small. He paid for a co-worker's coffee, left a bigger tip than usual, donated anonymously to a family from church. Nothing dramatic happened, no sudden windfall, but something shifted inside. He no longer felt like a prisoner to fear. He felt aligned. And then came the whisper. He was driving one evening listening to a podcast about abundance and obedience. The speaker said, "God doesn't need your money, He needs your heart. But your heart is tied to your treasure, so He'll ask for one to reach the other." Ethan pulled over, parked, cried. It wasn't about losing. It was about opening his hands, his mindset, his limits. He remembered another Hill quote, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." But for that, he had to let go of the need to control everything. He whispered, "I trust you, even with this." That was the night everything changed. Not outside, but within. In the weeks that followed, Ethan didn't tell anyone what he was doing. He was still going to work, still attending church, still balancing bills. But his heart had a new rhythm. He began to see things differently. The same old street on his way to work felt full of life. The barista's smile seemed sacred. Even the delays and inconveniences became opportunities to pause, not panic. One day, a friend approached him and said, "You look lighter. What's going on?" Ethan just smiled. "I'm learning to let go." His friend laughed. "Let me know if that pays your rent." Ethan didn't argue. He wasn't on a mission to convince anyone. He was on a journey to rediscover trust. Then came the test. His car broke down. The repairs were more than he had. He looked at his bank app and sighed. The old Ethan would have spiraled, complained, maybe even cursed at the sky. But this time, he sat in silence. He remembered Proverbs 3:6. "In all your ways, submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." He closed his eyes and prayed, "If you've brought me here, then I believe you'll bring me through." That evening, someone from his Bible group texted, "Hey, God placed it in my heart to send you something. Hope this helps." It was the exact amount needed for the repair. Ethan cried again, not because of the money, but because of the reminder he was not alone. Napoleon Hill's quote returned, "Strength and growth come only through continuous effort and struggle." But what if struggle wasn't punishment? What if it was preparation? He started seeing his limits not as barriers but as invitations. He made it a habit to write one thing per day he was grateful for, even the inconvenient ones. Thank you for the long line. It helped me slow down. Thank you for the silence. It taught me to listen. Gratitude rewired his nervous system. He began sleeping better, laughing more. Stress had not disappeared, but it no longer ruled him. Then came the unexpected opportunity. His boss asked him to speak at a staff event. "You've been glowing," she said. "People notice." He shared about values, about mindset, about one verse that changed his posture toward life. The generous will prosper. Those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. Proverbs 11:25. He didn't preach, he shared. Colleagues came to him after saying, "That's what I needed." One even asked, "Can we meet weekly to talk more about this?" And just like that, Ethan became a mentor, not because he had it all together, but because he was learning to live open. He started a simple weekly message series called Monday Manna, just a verse, a quote, and a reflection. He didn't have a big following, but the emails he received said it all. "This saved my marriage. I cried reading this at my desk. Please don't stop." Ethan realized, purpose doesn't come after prosperity. It invites it. One morning, as Ethan sat with his coffee and Bible, he landed on Proverbs 16:3 again. "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans." He'd read it before, but this time, he didn't just read. He responded. He whispered, "I'm tired of small faith. I'm ready for bold obedience." That day, he wrote a list of dreams he'd buried. Not goals, dreams. Things he had convinced himself were too big, too late, or too unrealistic. Start a small business rooted in purpose. Teach others how faith and finances align. Travel and speak truth to those forgotten. Write a devotional that doesn't sound like a lecture. He looked at the list and laughed. Who am I kidding? But he didn't delete it. He kept it taped to the inside of his journal. That week, his friend Julia, the same one who joked about rent, called. "I know someone looking for a speaker for a youth retreat. I gave them your name." Ethan almost said no, but something in him said yes. He went. Standing before 40 high schoolers, he felt unsure, but he opened with honesty. "I used to think faith was just about behavior, but I've learned it's about vision, about living like what God says is actually true." He shared Proverbs, Hill, stories of small obedience, quiet faith. Afterward, one student hugged him and said, "You made me believe again." That night, Ethan journaled, "I think I'm finding my voice." The invitations multiplied, not from fame, but faithfulness. Local churches, podcast interviews, Zoom classes. He kept it simple, never selling, just serving. And people responded, because they weren't looking for perfect. They were starving for real. He launched an online group called Abundance by Design, a safe space for men and women to rebuild their relationship with faith and finances. One member wrote, "This is the first time I've talked about money without shame." Another shared, "I thought God only blessed certain people. You helped me see that I was included too." Ethan realized something profound. The greatest wealth is alignment, when what you believe, say, and do all walk in the same direction. It wasn't about net worth, it was about soul peace. He spoke on generosity, not as donation, but as declaration. "I am not owned by fear." He taught that tithing wasn't about math, but mindset. That trusting God with your money wasn't foolish, it was freeing. He quoted Hill often, "You give before you get," and Proverbs to anchor it. "Honor the Lord with your wealth, and your barns will be filled to overflowing." Proverbs 3:9-10. Ethan wasn't rich by the world's standards, but he had overflow in joy, peace, and meaning. Ethan's life looked different now. Not because he won the lottery or landed a six-figure deal, but because he walked lighter, spoke with weight, gave without fear. One day, while walking home from a small group gathering, he passed a boy on the steps of an apartment building, head down, holding a skateboard. Ethan stopped. "You good?" The boy shrugged. "Just trying to figure stuff out." Ethan smiled. "Me too. Every day." The boy looked up. "You look like you figured it out." Ethan chuckled. "That's because I stopped pretending I had to." He sat beside him, told him about Proverbs, about Hill, about trusting something bigger than fear. The boy didn't say much but nodded. "Thanks, man." Later that night, Ethan wrote, "Ministry isn't always microphones. Sometimes it's moments." That became a theme in his teachings. Not everything loud is powerful, and not everything quiet is weak. Proverbs 17:27 became his mantra. The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered. He was invited to a business panel where others talked fast, pitched hard, and chased attention. Ethan simply told stories. A florist who gave bouquets in faith, a man who forgave a debt and gained a partner, a family that tithed when they had nothing and saw their rent paid by a stranger. He ended with this: "Wealth isn't built in secrets, it's built in systems, and God's system begins with trust." Afterward, a woman came up to him in tears. "You just described everything I've been afraid to say." He learned that impact often whispers. Later, he began working on his devotional, not out of pressure, but overflow. He called it Hidden Gold, wisdom for everyday abundance. Each chapter opened with a proverb, expanded with a story, and closed with a Hill insight. He didn't expect a bestseller. He just wanted to obey the nudge. The first print run sold out. Emails poured in from people in hospitals, prisons, and retirement homes. His words reached places he couldn't. One man wrote, "I was ready to give up. Your chapter on Give Before You Get helped me forgive someone I hated." Ethan wept. He never set out to be an author, just aligned. One morning, Deborah looked at him over breakfast. "You're different," she said. He smiled. "I'm becoming who I always was. I just stopped resisting." She squeezed his hand. "We've never had more peace, and ironically, never had less fear." Ethan laughed. "That's the currency of heaven, peace that makes no sense." Years passed. Ethan's name wasn't on billboards, but it was in people's hearts. He had helped start over a dozen community-based small groups centered on wisdom, wealth, and wholeness. Not franchises, families. One day, a teenage girl in one of the groups said, "You made me believe I'm not too young to matter." Ethan smiled, "And I'm not too old to learn." His message never changed. Trust God. Give first. Live open. A podcast invited him to talk about financial freedom. The host asked, "What's the greatest investment decision you ever made?" Ethan answered, "I stopped waiting to be rich to be generous." The host paused, then whispered, "Wow." That clip went viral. But Ethan didn't care about the numbers. He cared about the people behind the numbers. He still lived simply, still wrote thank you notes by hand, still mentored one-on-one. He often said, "Success is not what happens to me. It's what flows through me." One afternoon, he returned to the same bookstore where he found Napoleon Hill's quote years earlier. He walked past the same shelf. The quote was still there. "Faith removes limitations." He touched the spine of the book and whispered, "It did." Back home, he opened his journal and wrote, "Lord, thank you for teaching me that wealth is not a destination. It's a decision to trust, to give, to grow." Then he added, "True riches are not counted in coins, but in changed lives." As he closed the book, Deborah called from the kitchen. "Babe, a woman just messaged. Said your last post kept her from giving up on life." Ethan exhaled. Then that post was enough. He stood on the balcony, looked at the sky, and whispered, "This is abundance." And it was never about more stuff. It was about more surrender. His phone buzzed. Another invite, another message, another door. He smiled. "Let's go."